Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? Pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.
Hey, Bandit, me and Fred's got a question. What do you and Fred want? How come we doing this? Well, why not? Well, they said it couldn't be done. Well, that's the reason, son.
3 movies that have changed your life.
How long have you been a robber?
4'1".
Good Lord. Jolly good. 4'1".
Yes.
Well, that is a long time.
3 movies that have changed your life.
John, I want this material burned. All of it.
Welcome to another BitFlix.com podcast. My name is Stuart Wright, and welcome to the show, film and TV producer Jonathan Weissler.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, sir. Now, you're going to be sharing 3 movies that changed your life, but before that, you're going to draw back the curtain on the current state or certain aspects of indie film financing. Does that sound like what you've signed up for?
Just about, yeah.
Right, we've got 3 items that you've given me to cover, and I think in the spirit of the 3 films format, we'll keep each of those to around 5 minutes. So every time we hear the alarm go off, that's our cue to move on to the next bullet point you've given me. Okay? Clock's ticking on how is film financing changing and evolving in the world of streamers?
That's a question we could answer for hours. It's changed completely. The old days of EIS, a bit of equity, maybe a couple of pre-sales, they're completely over. And the middle class, big budget films are still studio pictures. And the very, very, very low budget films are still going to be made independent of any kind of professional distribution or financing. But that middle ground, the old days, which would have been 3 to 8 to 10 million pound movies, getting those off the ground has completely changed in terms of how we set them up and how we work with structuring finance and sales. So
what are the main then moving parts then of a finance package that will make those kind of middle class films get financed?
So fundamentally, the first line item is going to be the tax credit, which is fantastic in the UK. If you're below 15 million quid, we're up to 40%, and you can get a little bit more than that with some of the post deals in terms of visual effects and what you can actually get. But you're still going to net finance the rest of the picture, and equity is still king. Real money is absolutely king. EIS, which was something that I did a lot of movies with, that doesn't really exist in the old days. And the pre-sale market, what we go to Berlin or Cannes or AFM for, it's a much, much smaller pool of sales agents who are actually able to offer financial commitments, minimum guarantees, MGs. So a lot of times, at best, we're getting a sales commitment from a distributor without any upfront money. So that puts a lot more pressure into how we finance.
So where are we getting this 8 million from then? If the cash is king?
On that basis, we'll get a lot of it through debt finance, where a gap finance would come on knowing that the film will get some form of release, and that will tend to come in later in the day, and they're expensive money. I hate it when I read a budget that has excessive financing fees, but that's unfortunately part of the game. So unfortunately, it still comes fundamentally from equity. The broadcasters in the UK, co-pros are fantastic, but they're not as prominent as they used to be. Because everyone's sort of reining in the hatches a bit. So if you can get a broadcasting commitment, a commitment from Channel 4 or BBC, Sky Movies are doing really, really good work these days in terms of getting involved in British independent filmmaking. Universal used to be amazing, but they don't really do it as they used to. And, there's still avenues like the BFI and various local funds. And I find them helpful. It's nice to see them there, but I don't know, I don't know how much value they bring outside of, they'll bring a small percentage of your budget, but for the amount of financing, effort and cost, and also hoop jumping to go through their requirements, which are very niche to their own agendas, how difficult they are to get off the ground. So fundamentally, in that middle, I mean, the main thing is to go with is to get the right cast for the project and to have a story that is commercially viable.
And how is what you're talking about influenced by it being a world dominated more so than ever by streamers?
Well, it's dominating everything because it's just meaning a lot of films just aren't getting made, or they move over to television.
Okay.
So, we're just not seeing the quantity of films in that budget made that we used to.
Mm-hmm.
And also the cost of filmmaking has gone up significantly post-COVID, post-Brexit, post-just inflation. The actual, what 3 or 4 million quid buys you now on a movie in terms of cast and, number of shooting days is far less than it used to be 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And it's disproportionate. So you have to put the money on the screen. You have to get the right level of cast. And that's critical. I think that's a mistake I think a lot of people make. They think just because they've got an actor that some people have heard of doesn't mean they bring value to the actual film and the value in the marketplace.
If we were to get down to brass tacks, what would if you were to sit down and go, hey, I like that budget plan, how would that 8 million stack up then? Where's the 8 million coming from? So if you broke it down as lumps, be reductive. It doesn't have to be that detailed, but in sort of basic terms, what are if we had the 8 million budget and we're good to go? How is that 8 million made up?
Where's it coming from? So the tax credit will come in probably about with 3. I'll probably get some gap financing for if I needed to. I've never done gap financing. I've done it once. I've always avoided it. But I think the main thing is getting a sales deal of some kind, and getting the right level equity. Are we still talking or are we out?
You can finish your thought. Go on.
Okay, so out of that 15 million, I would say, 8 million, I would say 3 million is tax. These are broad brushstroke numbers.
No. That's what
I would look probably for 2 or 3 million pounds of actual equity. I would look for some broadcasting deal that could come in for a couple of mil. And then, whether we're going to be talking about post-production deals in a moment, post-production deals and gap financing, but they're cobbled together. And I mean, I don't know if you can do visuals here. I could send you some pie charts to show you percentage-wise where things can come from. But invariably...
No. I think you've given us a good picture. So let's move on to that second question then. What are the challenges of post-production deals and how can people navigate them to get the best from them?
Okay, so a lot of major post houses in London run post-production deals where they will provide the post-production pipeline for your movie. They'll provide the edit suites, your sound post, your sound mix, your visual effects, your grading, and all your delivery elements, and visual effects, which constitute your post-production process.
Yeah.
The only thing they tend not to include is music and soundtrack. And in exchange for that, to hook you in, they will do what's called a post-production deal, where they will take a percentage. They will take your tax credit normally or negotiate a first position or a significant position in the recoupment of the movie. So on a practical level, they're incredibly useful, and films can't get made without them. So film recently, The Brutalist, Lip Sync came on board and basically saved their ass, with a post-production deal. However, the flip side is when you're in the post-production deals, it can be a hit or miss experience. So as a film financier, as a producer with my financing head on, post-production deals are a lifeline. But as a filmmaker, they can be challenging. So I did the first ever post-production deal in the UK on a movie back in 2006.
Oh, wow.
And I did it on a film called In Your Dreams with Linda Hamilton that I produced with Sir David Frost. And we did a post deal with a company which doesn't exist now called Future Films. And it was wonderful. They were basically paying for all our post until we actually started post. And then I realized that I was getting... I perhaps didn't get the level of crew that I was expecting and the amount of time and consistency and quality that the film deserved. And it became a fight. And because I'm quite a technical guy, my background's line producing, it became a really technical push to get the film over the line and on schedule. And I think that's a challenge, that because once you're in with a post house, they've kind of got you by the balls. And obviously you want your relationship to be great, and you want to not do one film with them. You want to do 10 films with them over 25 years, you know? But the reality is that they're in the business of getting your money and and they're going to make profit from both the deal itself in terms of their financing costs and their position they negotiate. But also it's in their interest to do things as cheaply as possible. And that's often at the detriment of the movie. So I think that's the real challenge. Post-production deals are a lifeline in this industry, and they're for me, they're a double-edged sword.
So if we go back to that 8 million, then how much of that 8 million is post-production in terms of the sub?
Well, so assuming that you're not massively visual effects heavy, then you're probably going to be on an 8 million, which is a really low budget comparatively. Your post-production budget is anything between about 400 grand and maybe 800 grand.
Okay.
You could probably do it for a lot less, but you end up cutting corners. You want your film to sound and look good. You'll need and then if you're spending more than that, you'll be spending, I'm hoping it's on a budget ratio like that. It's because of the level of visual effects you've got, or soundtrack, or some other element that has to be provided to make the story work.
Yeah.
So on that 800. So and also they're not going to come in with your music. They might come in with, say, 500,000, 600 grand of post costs, and that's in exchange for that, they're going to take your tax credit or the first position in your tax credit, and they have a lot of other hooks. And
what does for the lay person listening, what does first position mean in terms of what does that make? What privilege does that give them?
Okay, so when you do your recoupment on a movie, the money tends in the independent world goes through a collection account, and the first money tends to, and it's all carefully mapped out before we start. So all the investors and financiers and participants know what and when they're getting. So it means, first position means they get their money first before people who are second position. So, and a lot of financiers, everyone wants first position. Nobody wants to get paid after everyone else has been paid.
So why is a post-production deal able to negotiate such a strong position then? What gives them that strength?
Because they can make them, because they know without it, you're not making the movie.
Okay. So that's a fairly strong negotiating position, isn't it?
Yeah, very strong. And also a lot of producers, a post house, if you're not that experienced or you're not that technical, is a godsend, because you're under one umbrella and everything is roughly provided for. Okay. So you're not having to source 30, 40 different deals through post-production. You're not doing your sound editing in one place, your Foley recording in another.
Finish your thought.
Yeah. You're not doing your visual effects through 3 companies, and your picture edit where your cutting rooms are in one place and a grading somewhere else, and all your delivery elements. You're doing it all under one umbrella, and that I won't call it lazy, but it becomes easy.
Yeah.
And a good producer should always be setting up their next film when they're in post. So, and they're pros and cons. I've done post deals. I choose not to do them if I can, but I'm absolutely open to them if I have to.
So the alternative to a post deal is just going to a post house and asking to buy their services. Is that the alternative?
Yeah. As cheaply as possible while getting as much as you can. And you go to niche companies. So you go to a company. So I love sound mixing my movies at Twickenham Studios, which I think is the best place in England to mix movies.
Right.
Sound mix movies. I like going, I've got visual effects houses I work with a lot. I like to go to them, and I get very good value and very high quality work. I like, in terms of where I'm physically editing, I just need a room. And at this day and age, a computer, I need an editor and a couple of assistants, and I can do that anywhere. So that line item is relatively small. And then the other big one is your color grading, where you actually grade your movie. And, in a post house, they'll have something, but I've seen horrible situations where decent movies are being edited in, are being color graded in rooms the size of your office right now on a TV screen. And it's like, that's not cinema. You're not going to get that look. You're not going to get that attention to detail or the experience of the colorist. So for me, I get a lot more flexibility for a much more high quality post-production away from a post-production deal.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember speaking to some people who literally put their films on delay in post because they couldn't, during COVID, because they couldn't hear the film in a real in a real screening room. They weren't prepared to sign it off on a laptop.
Yeah.
You know, it was like,
No, you're absolutely there, and they were absolutely right to. So I'm a huge believer of mixing in the. So what I like about Twickenham is their main mixing studio is the size of is the size of a couple of tennis tables. Feels like a cinema.
Yeah.
You know, you can actually, they've got a ping pong table in their mixing suite. You know, and it lets you see the movie and you feel it. And I always say to my directors, this will never sound as good as it does in this room. And I'll tell you one last story that will always make you laugh. One of my favorite things about sound mixing, once we spent all this money and we've got an amazing sound mix, we've got amazing music, amazing sound effects, the dialogue is clear, crisp and clear as we want it to be. We mixed it all together. Once we finish that mix, the final mix, I always in that room, and Twickenham are great with that, pull out a normal TV that you can buy in Curry's for 400 quid, and we watch the movie with those speakers, because that's how most people are going to experience your movie.
Yeah.
And then you're going to find out how your film is.
Which is, I was going to say, that sounds like that's like the old fashioned story of the music producer that goes out to the car and puts the tape in the car stereo and goes, right, this is what your band sounds like, kind of thing.
That's exactly right. It will never sound as good. You know, when we're recording music in a music studio, and I've got an orchestra and I've got musicians, it's amazing. The film's alive. As far as you're concerned, your John Williams can go and kiss your ass. But, and then you hear it later on, and it's, and it's been mixed. And the sound mix is always a fight. You're always fighting between sound effects and music and dialogue, and which one takes the lead. And, the composer always wants their music to be dominant. Your dialogue must be clear. And that's the art of it. That's the game. That's the game.
Indeed. Right then. Final point, and this may be a little broad or even obvious, but can you explain the importance of knowing how to make films in terms of surviving indie film financing and the fact that most people don't seems to be a problem you're pointing out. So go on, unpack that for me, please.
I think the challenge is that it seems like a no-brainer that people know how to make movies.
Yeah.
But for a lot of indie filmmakers, they don't actually make that many films. So they're only going to be shooting a movie. An average indie movie director might be doing a film every couple of years, and they're going to be doing a 6-week, 7-week shoot. So that means they're getting 3.5 weeks a year on average of set time.
Yeah.
And they're working invariably with constrained results and constrained constraints in terms of what they can work with and budget and resources, and everything's a compromise. And I find I get sent a lot of movies for financing. And I got sent a movie this week. It's a period action film.
Yeah.
It was a £15 million budget, 15 million euros actually. And it was clearly written. The budget was clearly written by someone who does. I checked them out. They clearly are used to doing film. They're used to filmmaking on set. They've never done post, because there was an 80-page budget, yet the post-production budget was 3 pages and was broad line items. They were paying the editor, I think, 40 grand, and they were trying to pay their DOP 300 grand, which is so disproportionate. And if you're not used to making films, then you're going to fall up. It's going to go wrong. It's a tough racket. So you're very much at the hands of your line producer when you're filming, and you've got to get a good one. But at the same time, I mean, my background is line producing, so I tend to hire good production managers, and I take, and I hire someone. I'm very, very knowledgeable and conscious on how to make films and how to get the most out of a budget.
Yeah.
But a lot of people aren't. And I see mistake after mistake after mistake. So outside of getting the finance, it's just actually making the film.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems I get sent is people put certain budget levels together and don't allocate enough time. So I'm seeing lots of $25 million sort of big budget indies that will have a Mel Gibson or, a Nick Cage wannabe to be in the lead, and they're taking a huge percentage of the budget, but they're going to shoot the movie in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And that if you do get Mel Gibson, he's going to show up for 4 days, and you've got, 20 pages of dialogue and 3 action scenes to shoot. And your film will always be shit at that point. You can never maintain that level of production value to actually shoot your movie to the quality that it deserves. And a lot of it comes out of budget, but a lot of it also comes out of experience and knowing how to get a good producer will get the most out of a schedule. I always want as many shooting days as possible, because that's where the film is made. I think there are ways to box clever. When I'm shooting a movie, by the last week of filming, I've wrapped most of my actors, and I've still got another couple of weeks, and I can be shooting lots of, I can still be shooting lots of other sequences and shots that are needed to increase the production value of the movie. It's always quite lonely at the end of a film with actors because they all fly home, and by the end, you've only got a few left.
Yeah.
And in that time, that's where you can be really productive for the edit to get because all we do on set is collect shots for the editor. Everyone thinks they're these romantic places of creativity. In the independent sort of mid-budget world I work in, they're not. You have a plan and you're following it. And all we do on set is collect shots for the editor.
Yeah.
And the better quality the shots and the more variety, the better our film's going to be.
Yeah, because you hear lots of nightmare stories about that nature of just collecting shots. I remember the whole hoo-ha that surrounded that film, The Snowman, where it got out that they never actually finished filming it. So when they went in the edit, they didn't have a whole film, which is why the film that got released ended up not being that much fun, and therefore couldn't.
Well, that doesn't sound like a grown-up way of working. I mean, I had one movie I did. I'm not going to say the name. I had a director who'd come out of commercials, documentaries actually, and he didn't understand the idea of staying. He just thought he can go and get a camera and reshoot. So we ended up doing something like close to 70 days first unit filming.
Yeah.
And we including a 20-day block in post-production. And the financiers were indulging this, but it wasn't our... And I remember the day that we wrapped our 70th day of shooting was the initial day that we were supposed to be delivering a finished film.
Right.
But the studio, it was a bigger budget project, and everyone went...
So in that sense then, Jonathan, if you were asked to come on board as the line producer and you look at the schedule and the budget, is there situations where you're just going to go, no, you're not going to, you can't deliver this on...
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, I write the budget and the schedule.
Right.
So
Finish your thought. Go on, keep going.
So when I get, I'm a producer with a line producing background.
Right.
So I expect a high quality budget and schedule as part of a project when it's being sent to me, or if I'm initiating the project, then I'll create one.
Right. Okay.
And I also, you had a very good friend of mine on your podcast recently, Alex Gunn.
Yeah.
He looks at schedules all the time, and we often joke about them when we chat. He's a very good friend of mine about, then you're not going to shoot this act. You're not going to shoot a 3-page dialogue scene in the morning and a big fight scene with the same characters in the afternoon, and you're going to blow up a car. You're not. But a lot of people think you can, and then the naivety to think that you can still get away with that and do that. And it sounds great right up until you're putting your production, you're in pre-production, and the reality kicks in, and there has to be a reality adjustment. And I find projects where people kind of know what they're doing at the beginning, you can put a lot more effort into how to make things better than how just to make things exist.
So in a sense, this is a message about getting the most out of pre-production, isn't it? Then before you're on set, you kind of...
Well, it's not just, you still got to get it right on set. It's about getting the right people. It's about getting a really good first AD. It's about getting a really good, it's about getting a really good crew. It's about, but fundamentally, it's about having a director and a producer who can sign off on the plan and commit to it. Because you can easily... I do a lot of commercials. And some of the commercial directors I work with are have been indulged, and they're used to being indulged. I work with a guy called Tony Kaye, if you know him, who did American History X.
Indeed, yeah.
And we do a lot of commercials, and he's brilliant. He's got the best style of everyone I've ever worked with. But, he shoots a lot of material. I did a commercial with him a few years ago, and we shot 25 hours of material for a 30-second commercial.
Blimey.
Took us 3 days just to watch the rushes, in the edit. So it's about knowing at the beginning what you're trying to achieve and sticking to it.
Yeah.
Films will always go wrong for one simple reason, where people have different expectations of the project they're trying to make. And films go well when everyone is united about what they're trying to do and how they're going to do it. And I think that's a life lesson in there.
Indeed. No, that's a very positive note to end on. Thank you for giving us that little insight into the world of indie film financing. And we shall now move on to three movies that have changed your life. For those that haven't heard it, Jonathan's given me 3 movies. We're going to spend 5 minutes talking about why the film is important and or memorable to Jonathan. And every time we hear this sound, You can hear that at your end, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Every time we hear that alarm sound, 5 minutes are up and we'll stop talking and we'll move on to the next movie. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. First choice,
Go on.
1986's Aliens turned the horror of Alien into an action thriller, written and directed by James Cameron and starring Sigourney Weaver as the now heroic Ripley, decades after surviving the Nostromo incident and sent out to re-establish contact with this terraforming colony, but finds herself going literally head-to-head with the Alien Queen. Fun fact, Sigourney Weaver's Best Actress at the Academy nomination for this movie was the first ever for a role in a sci-fi action movie. And Lance Henriksen said he privately pledged he'd quit acting if the part didn't work out for him after years as a journeyman, and it proved to be one of his most successful films. So tell me, Jonathan, why did this film have so much impact on you and what memories does it hold?
Wow. So first of all, I was going to say, choosing three films, how difficult. I nearly went with Annie Hall, The Odd Couple, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But
there's always a repeat visit. There's always a repeat visit to do three more films. But go on, Aliens.
So Aliens. So I didn't see Aliens in the cinema. I was just that too young to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I was 11 years old when it came out. And I saw it on VHS. And I'd never seen the momentum and the scale of storytelling, the escalation. I think I saw Aliens before Alien.
Okay.
I'm not sure, maybe I did. And I just think it's a near perfect film that I think just to this day just stands up as one of the best directed, best structured, most exciting films ever put on film.
Mm.
So it's, and it was interesting. I saw in the early 90s, they re-released, I think they did a special edition. And then they released the IMAX, the 70mm print at the Empire Leicester Square.
Yeah.
And me and a lot of friends, we went to watch it. And first of all, I realized how awful it looked on 70mm. They just took the 35mm, super 35mm neg and blew it up. So it was grainy as fuck. But I also was completely lost by the camera work, by the compositions. And I realized that I've been watching a pan and scan film my whole life. So just to see the film in widescreen just had a different rhythm and feeling.
I was going to say, seeing it how it should be seen, grainy or not, seeing it how it was meant to be must have been a major difference.
Yeah, everyone in that room knew what they were watching. You know, we all knew every beat of the film. I knew every frame, every cut of the film. I actually hired the production accountant from Aliens on one of my own movies just so I could get stories from working on the picture with it. Long time ago, I worked with that lady called Jill Bennett, who was the production accountant, and she was fantastic. And, you know, it was a tough shoot in England. I think the crew gave James Cameron a really difficult time. Original DOP was fired for being cantankerous and not being able to deliver. No one had heard of James Cameron. The word is that he couldn't get anyone to even show up to private screenings of The Terminator, which I think was coming out or hadn't come out or whatever. And, you know, it was a film that was just, it had so much against it other than the actual quality of the production design, which, you know, the incredible model work and the visual effects, special effects, and also characters. You just love those characters. You love Ripley. Burke is such an arsehole, you know, but you believe him. You know, you understand what Burke wants.
Yeah.
You know, it's the age of yuppies. He was a guy who just wanted to make money off the situation. You know, you loved Hudson, one of those great characters with all that great dialogue. I could just talk longingly about it for hours.
What's a favourite scene for you in the film? If you watched it a lot, what makes you keep coming back for more?
So when I was younger, I used to like that sort of sustained 13-minute action scene at the end.
Right.
James tends to have sort of a four-act structure where he does his massive action scene where most films will end, and then he adds an even bigger one immediately afterwards. So they're on a race to get out of the plant. They're all escaping the plant to get attacked, and that should be enough for them to escape. And instead, the girl falls down the tube, and then they have to go and get her. And you're thinking, oh my God, that's, you know. And Ripley uses that, you know, that great bit of foresighting where you see her using that loading machine, powerlifter. She's having she's the
ultimate exoskeleton.
Yeah, she's learning how to, you know, and it's woman against woman, mother against mother. what Ripley wanted more than anything was to be a mum, but she couldn't. And her daughter grew old and died without her. And then she meets Newt, the little girl. I mean, it connects on a level that, people don't realize it's connecting on because you care about the characters. And, that I like. Are we out?
There's our 5 minutes, sir.
Damn, that goes fast.
For Jonathan's second choice, we go back to 1991 for Oliver Stone's JFK. It stars Kevin Costner and Gary Oldman in a role he would later cite as one of his favourite performances ever. It tells the story of New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison, who tries to prove there's more to the Kennedy assassination than the official story. Fun facts: the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald by Jack Ruby was filmed on location in the actual basement garage of Dallas City Hall, where the real-life shooting took place. And the real Texas Theatre, where the police arrested Oswald, was kept in business and restored with money from the producers of JFK the movie, which is a very nice little aside.
Lovely.
So
Lovely.
Tell me, Jonathan, why is this film so memorable for you, and what impact did it have on you?
So I saw it in the cinema.
Yes.
And I'd never seen a film like it. I'd never seen something actually put the light to, shine the light to power and actually ask those questions. So you're watching, and the film works, not only is the craftsmanship amazing, the way that Oliver Stone is shooting on different formats, and the editing is so razor sharp, and John Williams' music is just so propelling. But for me, in the early 90s, there was the X-Files on TV, and we were starting to get into conspiracy theories, like a public zeitgeist. I definitely was. And suddenly the scene that just propels that film is the scene with Donald Sutherland. And he suddenly explains the conspiracy.
Yeah.
And it's so vast and it's so powerful. And you realize, and it seems so plausible that you feel like you're actually watching, it makes you angry. It's causing an emotional reaction. And I'd never seen anything like it. I was 16 years old when it came out. I'd never seen a movie that was that dynamic to watch in the cinema, and just, was able to, really make me question the world we're living in. And
it's interesting it had that impact on you, because I don't know if you know, it actually led to an act of, like, the state Senate created the Kennedy Archive Act. So that the files that got released during Trump's first term was as
not all of them. It's a bit like the UFO disclosure we're talking about now.
Of course. But I know what you mean, though. I think at the time, I don't think I'd really been aware of this idea of there was a difference of opinion about facts. I mean, obviously, the film Capricorn 1 was knocking about, and the idea that we never went to the moon, but that wasn't really a hardcore conspiracy.
That played as a thriller, and it was in the 70s. This was dealing with an old event. It was an event 30 years previously, which felt a lifetime ago then, and now I realise the film's also 30 years ago.
Scary. Well, let's not dwell on that.
Scary. Let's not dwell on that at all. But for me, it was it still is a perfect movie where it's not a film I revisit particularly often these days, but it's a film that is very much sort of part of my sort of, filmmaking cultural kind of structure, ability to craft, credible technique and polish alongside, really dynamic storytelling, and also have the emotional punch of, the court case at the end. I remember watching it the first time in the cinema, and people were absolutely upset that there was no resolution, forgetting that this was a true story and there will never be a resolution, and the fact that it could do that to you, and the fact that Oliver Stone was able to, to cause that reaction. And no one had done that before. This was before the internet, before Google, and before, if you want, they're researching anything was difficult, you had to read, which is dying these days. And then also, if you know a little bit about the production of the film, Oliver Stone, he shot 6-7 movies in 5 years. He was going so fast.
Yeah.
He did. And it's a bit like the Beatles, where they released 5-6 albums in 4 years. And I think there's an art of going incredibly fast. There's a momentum that you get. And as long as you've got a good team around you, and, there's a cinematographer, Robert Richardson, who was with Ollie on all of those pictures. And they were just able to create, push cinematically what they were doing, and just create that incredible volume of work. I mean, in 5 years, we got Platoon, we got Wall Street, we got Born on 4th of July, we got The Doors, we even got Talk Radio, which is a great movie. And and for me, it was the.
I hadn't thought about that. You're right. Yeah, it's a real sort of it's a real streak, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and we don't really get so many of our great. I'm going to finish this sentence.
Go on, finish your sentence.
So many of our great filmmakers work slowly. Look at Kubrick. I mean, a film a decade at one point.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say Terrence Malick, but so many filmmakers are doing a film every 3 or 4 years. And, Oliver Stone did some of the most incredible movies that were bombastic, and they were angry, and they had something to say as well as to entertain. And he did so many. And it was his peak. It's where he did 6 movies in 5 years. It's unheard,
Absolutely.
All of them are legendary.
Right then, sir. For your final choice, we're going to go to the end of the century for 1999's Fight Club. This is Jim Earl's adaptation, directed by David Fincher, of Chuck Palahniuk's cult classic novel of the same name, starring Edward Norton as an insomniac office worker who befriends Brad Pitt's Tyler Durden and forms an underground fight club that evolves into a desire to destroy the society that had pushed them into desperate measures of physical conflict for kicks. Fun fact, author Chuck Palahniuk first came up with the idea, and I didn't know, I like this. He came up with the idea after he'd been beaten up on a camping trip when he complained to some nearby campers about the noise of their radio. And when he returned to work, he was so fascinated that nobody mentioned his injuries. They just basically were like, hi, have a nice weekend, did you? Completely ignoring the fact he had a black eye.
That was the trigger. Oh, wow, I love that. I didn't know that.
And on a lighter note...
I met Chad Palahniuk once. He came to London, and I got to know him a little bit.
I'm very jealous, very jealous. Guy. And on a lighter note, both Brad Pitt and Edward Norton learned how to make soap.
I think that's a necessity in life, isn't it?
So tell me then, why is Fight Club so memorable for you, and what impact does it have on you?
So it's obviously Fincher and the craftsmanship coming off Seven's one of the greats. And it spoke to me. I totally understood. I was the right age. I was 25 years old when it came out. I totally understood the world where you want to sort of tick all these boxes, and suddenly is this even are we even going down the right road? And it was such a bombastic film. And then it becomes a twist. And then, and then suddenly you get the twist that, the film is basically a massive budget movie about schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And the ending, wow, what an ending. They destroy the establishment. And you couldn't make a film like that today. Your heroes would be incels. And, but it was so clever, the way he was crashing, people with different diseases just to get an emotional reaction, all these tiny, brilliant gags of which every single shot has something clever in it. We all know the IKEA shot with the motion control where it shows it's perfect, but let's, little things like he's bonking, Brad Pitt's Ed Norton knocks on the door and Brad Pitt comes out and he's wearing yellow kitchen gloves. And in the background, you see legs flailing and it's Helen Bonham Carter. Your mind just wonders, what were those gloves for? And, it's brilliant. It's so full of clever
Apparently they spent 3 days filming the noises for the sex scene you don't see that you don't ever see on camera.
I like to think they get it. I mean, Fincher is, for me, he's one of the absolute greats. Like he truly is.
What makes him great for you then? What makes Fincher so great compared to other directors?
I mean, he's the modern day Kubrick. His films are so precise. He tends to work in genre.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something like Gone Girl, for example, is just he works with great source material. But his films are just they have a depth and a gravitas. I mean, I'm a fan of Alien 3, which is for my sins. But 7 goes to something dark. Fight Club, Panic Room, not so much. He was like phoning it in. But but Benjamin Button was great. Doesn't get spoken about. And then the big one for me is obviously Zodiac.
Yeah.
And is a film without an ending. There's nothing satisfying about the third act of Zodiac. And it was frustrating the first time I saw it in the cinema. And now whenever Netflix tells me I need to watch it, I always do. You know, when it shows up on my home and I'm on the streamers, I'm like,
oh. But what is he in terms of what you're getting from watching a film that David Finch has directed? What is he doing that makes you so compelled to watch his movies?
Well, he's using all the tricks we use in commercials. He's completely drawing you into a world, and he's not letting it fool you. And you know, his films have a perversion and a darkness. He's not afraid to.
That's true.
Play to those characters. And you're watching it, but they're not sort of shock horror where someone suddenly jumps because the sound design goes boof, making you jump off the ground. It's just characters doing ugly things, not because they're evil, but because they want to or they need to. And consistently, you know, he just goes into that world. And if you watch his commercials, I do a lot of commercials, and Fincher's work is so highly regarded, where he just has that precision and that sheen. And I think he just grabs you. And he's made some really interesting choices, I think, since he did the Netflix deal, since he did, what's that TV show he did with Kevin Spacey, House of Cards?
Yeah.
You know, he's gone off and done some films.
There's the end of 5 minutes, sir. That's the end of Mr. Fincher's conversation. Well, look, that brings us to the end of 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Thank you for sharing. It just gives me to say thank you very much for giving you the time on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Hey, Bandit, me and Fred's got a question. What do you and Fred want? How come we doing this? Well, why not? Well, they said it couldn't be done. Well, that's the reason, son.
3 movies that have changed your life.
How long have you been a robber? 4'1". Good Lord. Jolly good. 4'1". Yes. Well, that is a long time.
3 movies that have changed your life.
John, I want this material burned. All of it.
Are you wondering what Matt and I do on the War Rocket Ajax podcast?
You might be better off asking what Chris and I don't do. We
rank every comic book story from best to worst.
Interview comics creators.
Reread long runs of comics and recap them.
Review the week's comics.
Catch up on comics we've never read before.
Answer listener questions.
Rate swords.
Recommend games, books, movies, and other things we like.
Check in with what we're doing with our lives.
Determine the rawest moments in comics history.
Judge fighting tournaments of fictional characters.
We're Rocket Ajax. We do a lot every week wherever you get podcasts.